They hand those things out like candy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for Lunch and Learn. So this is actually something that my friend Mike Angelos over here to my left set up. He is the chair of the program committee for the Dean's Advisory Board and brought in his friend Anthony Bucci to have a conversation about entrepreneurship and business. Mike is a VP at Goldman Sachs. Anthony was the founder and CEO of RevZilla, and is also very active in the board world, venture capital world, etc. So I'll let them go into more detail, but thank you for joining us. Thanks so much, Anthony and Mike.
Thanks, Cassie. Thanks, Cassie. You have seats back there? Okay. So you guys can come down if you want, not an issue. We don't bite. Well, Anthony, thank you for joining.
Thanks, Michael.
I would say it's not often, as I recall, I'm a Drexel alum. I graduated in 2011, joined Goldman Sachs after my college career. And as Cassie mentioned, I sit on the Dean's Advisory Board today, specifically chairing the program committee. And one of the big things that I always was proud of in being a Drexel alum was the amazing alum that came out of this university and what they've achieved, and thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to give students a chance to hear from them firsthand and how they thought about their Drexel careers, how they thought about their careers after Drexel, and really any advice that would be substantive to you all today, as well as our other alumni that are joining us, that maybe you could take home as a helpful nugget. And so Anthony has an amazing background and was kind enough to share his time with us today. So really, Anthony, to start it off, if you want to just give us a quick bio, a little more in depth than Cassie touched on, but
Sure.
RevZilla, etc.
Sure. So I'm a 2004 graduate. I started comp sci. By midway through Drexel, I realized I didn't want to write code anymore for two reasons. I'd done enough of it to know that I didn't enjoy it as much as I once did. And I also had been exposed to enough CTOs and higher level engineers to know that I was never going to be a superstar. The internet came out when I was 15 in 95. I was totally smitten with it and fully engaged when I was in high school. Did my 3 co-ops at Drexel, graduated, went back to my first co-op job, a company called WebLink, was there for 3.5 years from kind of 04 through 07.5, and left, joined up with 2 of my good friends and started RevZilla. We started in our apartment, we bootstrapped it, we never raised money. And in a span of 9.5 years, we made our dent in the universe. We became the largest online motorcycle aftermarket retailer in the world. We did a lot of video, we sold a lot of products. If you owned a motorcycle, you bought everything else from us. And there's a whole story about how we got there. And then we were bought in 2016. So I ran that company for 9 years. And the last, 6+ years, I've been doing a mixture of things. But I guess that's a little bit of a smattering of starting with Drexel, kind of the before and the after.
Yeah. Well, let's roll the tape back real quick. And I think this see if this is working.
Am I going to be annoyed at you?
No, probably not. Maybe.
The internet could be kind or unkind to me at this point.
Well, so you are quite the Instagram poster. Let's see here. Cassie. Let's see if I can do it this way.
All right.
So this is you and your pop.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So
UPS thought I was still really important. I was no longer the CEO, but they invited me down anyway. It was awesome. That's a great story.
That's Augusta. For those that don't know, so the Masters, that's where they play in Georgia. What was your dad's comment to you when you wanted to ride a motorcycle?
No. So I was a really tough teenager. I think I've always kind of marched to my own beat. And when I was a teen, I was like, oh, I want to get a tattoo and I want a motorcycle. My parents were like, oh my God, like kill me. And I was forbidden. My dad had a bike briefly in college. I think he realized how dangerous it was. And his comment through my entire teen through kind of 21 or 22 journey was, if you want to get a tattoo, which I don't have. I grew out of it. But if you want to ride a motorcycle, that's the moment when there's no longer a safety net for mom and I. And he kind of was very serious about it. So I ended up waiting till I was about 25 to buy my first motorcycle. But yeah, they were absolutely not. They forbade me from buying a motorcycle because as a young guy, 25 and under, I wanted a motorcycle for all the reasons that you would expect. A single guy living in Philadelphia or being in college wanted one. They were all the dumb, male, youthful reasons. And I think my dad knew. He's like, I need to save you from yourself.
So you said he gave you at one time the best piece of advice you'd ever received. What was that?
Sure. My dad's been great on a few fronts. My favorite one he ever gave me was the answer is always no, unless you ask. And that's, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. We hear that one in a lot of different forms, but it's still so true. But the best piece of advice he ever gave me was, so I was out of school. I'd been at this company, WebLink, for 3.5 years. I actually had a great run going. I graduated. My timing was great. It matters so much. It's a great time to start a business right now. Again, headed into a potential recession. But this would be 07, 3.5 years of this web agency. I was crushing it out of school. I learned a ton. I was working for the CEO. I was making great money, regardless of early career, like for any career. And I kind of got a little antsy. And I said to my dad, I think I'm going to leave and start this motorcycle e-commerce company with two of my buddies. And I talked to some of my friends and I got many, you're nuts. We're all still paying off our student loans. And, we're all trying to find our footing. We're 3 years out. You've crushed it. How the hell can you leave that job? And my dad said, you know what? Okay. If you think you can pull it off, I know you're a thoughtful person. He's like, you're either going to win or you're going to learn. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to fall flat on your face. It's not going to work. And when you go back and work for somebody else, you're going to have that on your resume. You're going to be that much more valuable. So my dad, to his credit, and my mom, they were okay with the calculated risk. They kind of said, go for it, which many other people in my life at the time, including my peers, were like, you're dumb. Like, why would you do that? I remember it really distinctly.
So where'd you grow up? Philly area or?
So I grew up in Glen Mills, Delaware County. I went to Garnet Valley. And then I looked at colleges all over the place and ended up at Drexel.
So 95, you're not at Drexel yet. You break your leg.
Yep.
How was that a pivotal moment in your own personal growth?
Super pivotal, super lucky. It was the summer before 9th grade going into high school. My parents were great and super supportive, but I was just this like odd duck kid that dad's like, oh, you want to go throw the baseball? And I was like, I just kind of want to play video games and skateboard. And they're going, all right, we don't know what to do with you. And I was at Haverford College for soccer camp before freshman soccer season. I wanted to play soccer in high school. And on the last day of camp, I got kicked in the leg. It broke. It was awful, actually. That was the end of soccer. And that was literally right as it wasn't even AOL. American Online hadn't even taken over at that point. It was called Prodigy back then. It was like dial up. I think you paid like $5 a minute. It was some insane thing. But I had a cast up to my hip starting in August and not coming off till October. And that was that full first freshman year of high school. I started freshman year of high school with a cast on crutches, but I was stuck in front of the computer. I conned my parents. I was like, listen, let me get this internet thing. And I literally just fell down the rabbit hole. And that was it. I mean, I turned my kind of love of nerdy, curious pursuits and video games into, let me figure out how this internet thing works. And it's really nascent stage. I taught myself how to program that year, Visual Basic 3.0. I mean, it was just so early on, but two things happened. One, it created this passionate channel for pursuit, but also from an identity perspective as a young kid, I think it was the first thing that I really discovered that I'm like, I can be good at this. And I found a lot of self-confidence in it, and I just ran with it.
So you didn't go to homecoming, but you worked on code.
I probably struggled through homecoming. Yeah, I was probably overmatched.
Yeah.
That part was not an easy part. High school was not the easiest time of my life.
Not with the cast on.
Not with any of it. I was just doing my own thing.
So you're getting towards college. Where did you apply?
So by the time I hit college, so during high school, I did a ton of tech stuff. I was just all in. At one point in high school, I even went and took classes at Delaware County Community College. I asked our administration, I'm like, listen, can I go take computer programming? I was a junior. I was so into it. And I knew I wanted to go somewhere with work study. I looked at Northeastern, I looked at Drexel, I looked at Penn, Boston College, Boston University, Syracuse. And I really quickly realized for me that there were some colleges that, I mean, Drexel, John Fry's gonna hate me for saying this, but like in 98, it was like ugliest campus on America for like 5 years in a row, right? It was all red brick and concrete. There were no trees. I mean, literally, I saw Drexel and Penn like a week after each other. My mom's like, wait, the red brick school? I'm like, absolutely. Drexel looks very different. Papadakis, John Fry have done an amazing job in the last couple decades. But back when I went here, it was different. And I was all about continuing work study, 5-year with the co-op. I saw some places that had a very different value proposition on college that were in, call it more idyllic scenarios. And I said, I went 5 years, 3 co-ops. To me, the co-ops were almost more important than the school. And I want to be in a big city with access to lots of companies. And I didn't care that in 99, we didn't have a lot of trees.
So let's see. There we go.
Oh my God, that's
There you
amazing.
are.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable.
You're at Drexel now.
That's the 4th floor of towers.
I lived on the 5th. I thought the 4th was girls. They must have switched it around every year.
I think they ended guys on the 4th floor after we were there because we almost got thrown out like 3 times.
Well, I'm sure most people here don't know what the cone heads are, but that speaks to your our conversation earlier about Halloween stores and whatnot. But
You're a ridiculous human for finding that. That's actually, I'm playing a PlayStation 1 Tony Hawk Pro Skater in my friend Cleveland's room. Keep going.
So you're at Drexel. Go in the co-op program.
Totally.
Where's your first co-op?
So it was a mixture of preparation and luck that found me for my first co-op. So that would have been the fall of 2000, which if you guys, any internet historians here, the dot-com bubble burst in the spring of 2001. So there's a local company, I talked about it a little earlier, it's called WebLink. They're now called workarea.com, started by a Drexel founder named Darren Hill. I applied to be a web application developer, which at the time was Cold Fusion, ASP.NET, really early days of the internet. And, that company was like 30 people when I went there. I mean, they were working on like sites like hoopstv.com, early internet stuff, like Ravel Monogram. I'm trying to think of some like early Lily Pulitzer, like big retail brands trying to do e-commerce. But it was really
a startup.
it was a startup, a Wild West show. Darren was out of college. The Wolf Building, which is 12th and Callow Hill. It's about 2 blocks north of Reading Terminal Market. It's still there, which is really funny. It's right down the block from GoPuff's first headquarters. So it's always nostalgic going to visit those guys. But yeah, I mean, I got that co-op job and I got to see a startup up close. We were an agency. I mean, then it was, CEO was 25. I was 20 years old. Like we weren't even legal yet. And I mean, later on, I would go back after college. We used to joke we're a rock and roll band that makes websites. But in our 20s, I mean, it was hair on fire, move fast, build it on the fly, figure it out on the fly. Just an amazing experience. We had a ton of fun. We had a lot of great work.
Now it ended abruptly for you though.
Totally. I was laid off after 4 months. They went from 40 people to 7 people. To the credit of the 2 co-founders, they took out personal loans just to keep the business going. I mean, it was nuclear winter for the startup landscape or for the internet in 2001. I mean, funding dried up for everything. And we were primarily working on clients that would have taken VC funding and no one could get funding. So I got to tell you, I was bummed my co-op ended after 4 months. I was really happy to be a sophomore in college and say, okay, like the economy has a few years to figure this out before I have to graduate. And to credit to those guys, they kept the company going. But I learned a ton there. And the biggest thing I learned was at a comp sci major, at that job, I worked for a guy named Len Bucchino, who's still around, and he's a CTO. It's funny, we linked in the last 6 months, and I was exposed to him from a level of talent as a kind of like a VP of engineering level. He was a fellow student as well that was done his co-ops, either just out of school or senior, just working part-time there. And I was like, that's a CTO in training. I'm not going to get to that level from a technical perspective. So, I mean, within a year after that, I think I realized that I needed to transition to more business and tech major. That was probably my biggest takeaway from working there. The end of writing code for me.
So it's interesting you say that. And I often speak to that when I'm with Drexel students. I was on co-op here during 2008 and I was studying finance. And so specifically, you're here in the 2000s during the dot-com bubble studying computer sciences. And so speaks to how those events when you're in school can be quite life-changing and the lessons you learn and how people navigate it. So
if I was leaning that way, my second co-op was slamming the door on it. So
Yeah. Well, so the third co-op, you get banned from Sevs.
So that's like the story is out of order. We were banned from 7-Eleven like some point midway through this through senior year. I've been asked to come back and speak, and I always have so much fun coming on days like this and do some other things. And I'm like, oh my God, what is the record keeping system at Drexel? Like I was on first name basis with this wonderful guy, Rob, who's the head of public safety. We lived right across from Calhoun, the end house by the volleyball courts. And I was not in a fraternity, but you would have thought four guys in a house were just like trying to have the best time they could ever have. Yeah. So like 7-Eleven on campus. I mean, maybe the nice word, we could say we're hooligans back then. But yeah, third co-op was an independent study. So by my third co-op, I knew I didn't want to work at a small company or a big company because my second company was big. My second co-op was big company. So I did independent study co-op. I actually was able to convince a local 5-unit nursing home chain to allow me to build their content management system and the evolution of their website with administrative capabilities. So over my 6-month co-op, on my own time, I sold, I want to say I charged them like $8,000 to $10,000. And I built that and launched it for them. And that was like the tail end of my programming career. But like at that point, it was like, okay, I've done small company, I've done huge company. I worked for DuPont on my second co-op. Third one is like, can I do this on my own? Because even at that point, I was having like entrepreneurial itch of like, if I can sell it and I can figure out how to build it, could that be my career?
Yeah, well, what's amazing is at that time the closed school didn't even exist. And that's essentially the genesis of what the closed school is today. So early guinea pig for Drexel in terms of expanding what the entrepreneurship program looks like.
And they didn't throw me out.
Well, one thing you shared with me is you said early career is bigger than paycheck.
Yeah.
Expand on that.
When I was ending high school, coming into college, my biggest fear was being in a career where I wouldn't enjoy the work because I had done certain things. And at that point, it was like the internet, right? Where it's like, I could just get lost. I like didn't sleep in high school. I was just up all night, online, programming, trying things, tinkering, experimenting. And I was like, how do I make that work? Right? Or how do I get paid to do something I enjoy that much? Because it's real work. But if you enjoy it, it doesn't tax you like doing something you don't want to do. Because I mean, when I was in high school, I just want to get through high school. I was like, all right, I'm gonna get A's and B's. I'm gonna go to a good school. I gotta get out of here. This whole thing I just knew it wasn't for me. So for me, coming to Drexel, I say this to folks your age now, which are take risks, try as many things as you can. It's easy to figure out. It's easier actually to figure out what you really don't like than it is to figure out the things you love. So just keep pulling on those threads, different jobs, different exposures, different classes. So for me, early career, I tell young people or people starting out, you get paid in how good is the network that you're developing? How good is your manager? Is the subject matter going to be useful for you for your career? Are you learning leadership skills? Is this going to be a stepping stone on your resume? When I got out of school, I could have taken a 50 to 60K job as an engineer, knowing I didn't want to write code, and I had those jobs. Or I could have taken the $30,000 a year. Might have even been less than that. Like not even enough money to have my own apartment. Like sleep on someone's couch for this first 6 months, and it wasn't even a salary. It was a draw because I wanted to switch into the sales and project management. I wanted to go to the sales side and business development side at WebLink. And I took that job because for me, it was like a pivot point of I'm going to learn more there. I'm going to be exposed to a young startup CEO, and I'm going to be surrounded by people that I want to work with versus, for me, putting on a collar shirt, maybe a tie, and going and writing code in a big corporate environment. So that was 100%. Try lots of things, and it's way bigger than the paycheck for as long as you need it to be. And as you move through life will get in the way. Mortgages, car payments, some families, all those things create structure that make it hard to make changes and take on risk, debt, like all those things.
So did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
So I look back and I think the writing was on the wall. I can look back now and say, oh my God, it was like so clear cut. I'm one of those, there's an old saying, it's like, would you be happier being the captain of a dinghy or the first mate on the Titanic, right? The Titanic's a bad example, on a cruise ship. Titanic, we'll just pull ourselves into those wheels. And I think I was one of those that like, I liked I like bringing people together to sometimes bring my ideas to life. And you go back to 5th grade, being called to the principal's office for forcing my mom to take me to like BJ's Wholesale Club and like buying sour candy and like marking it up 1,000%, selling out of locker. I think it was at one point my parents were like, listen, a school is, your classmates are not an audience to monetize. And they said that in different words, but I was like, well, no, it's like they need stuff. I can sell stuff. And I got even at, I don't know if you know this. I mean, even I had the residential director for Towers, October of freshman year, show up and knock on my door because I would leave the parties Friday night. And I don't know if Taco Lou is still there,
Yeah.
but I would have a griddle and I would make bacon, egg, and cheeses on my griddle that I used to use Ultima dollars, Dragon dollars at 7-Eleven. And I would charge them like, sell them for like $6. My unit cost was like 27 cents. And at some point the RD was like, are you the guy posting the menus in the elevators on the weekend nights? Like you can't run a business out of the dorm. So yeah, for me, I think I just saw opportunity. And I think my approach when I was a kid was maybe ask forgiveness and ask permission, which sometimes got me into trouble. But I think I've always had that leaning.
Okay. So this is the start of RevZilla.
It is.
What was the catalyst?
So the catalyst was, so remember, I did 3.5 years at WebLink working on retail and consumer brand and specialty e-commerce, from Speedo to Calvin Klein to Vineyard Vines. We launched to Spencer Gifts. We launched all these websites, and we got to see what great was as far as e-commerce in 2004. Well, in 2005 or 6, I wanted to buy a Ducati Monster Dark because I had finally gotten my feet under me in my career, and I was, I didn't need mom and dad, even if things went wrong. I was like, all right, I have a little bit of a cushion here. So I found this used motorcycle online, and I immediately said, where can I buy the cool carbon fiber helmet from Japan and the leather jacket from Italy and the exhaust pipes from Europe? Because I'm kind of a nerd like that. I'm curious. So I kind of like love going down rabbit holes. And I realized that at the time, there was a company called Motorcycle Superstore, which felt like Walmart for motorcycle gear. And if you're passionate about anything, whether it's photography or fishing or golf or motorcycle, anything that's not, I need to buy Kleenexes and a toaster, because Amazon's already won there. Like, if you're passionate about it, you want to find somewhere that you can buy it from where there might be somebody to help you, or it might feel like something that enhances the experience of spending money on the thing you love. That's what I felt like was missing. I was like, I'm nerding out on being a new motorcyclist, and everywhere sucks. So the truth of the matter is, instead of buying the bike with the $4,000 I had saved, I actually like linked up with my 2 buddies, one of which is also Nick on the right in that picture with the black jacket. It's also a Drexel grad. We started the business. We're like, I think there's room for a tech and experience oriented retailer. At the time, it was, you guys might not remember Barney's. The Barney's of motorcycle gear. Barney's was this like high-end New York-based like retailer of like really cool clothing. And then it really became like, can we be the Zappos of motorcycle gear and just like do this really consistently with a high degree of service? And all the content and media stuff came later. But that's the origin story. I mean, we're front in Arch Street. The top picture where the 3 of us are holding a beer was our first, I think it was our first $5,000 sales day. And that would have been May of 2008. We were less than a year old. And I mean, that's Nick's bedroom behind me over my right shoulder. He didn't have a door. That was a sheet. I mean, it was like, you want to talk about bombed out. We were in like a bombed out warehouse, like from the Ninja Turtle movie. It's like, yeah, it was like the early days were just so scrappy and broke. It was a lot of fun, but it was nuts.
So understood the connection with Zappos and obviously Barney's, but Porter's Five Forces speaks to threat of new entry, right? There was existing businesses.
Totally.
There's a 3 of you guys running this company at the start. How did you start to build trust and relationships with customers that took them away from the existing competitors?
So we snuck in when it was dark. We launched in November of 2007. The financial crisis happened in 2008, 2009. It's why it's such a great time right now to start a business. Timing matters. Execution matters. Go-to-market strategy matters. But honestly, if you look at so many businesses and people who have been successful, when did they start and when did they get out? They are like more important than anything. So we started in November of 2007. We bootstrapped. We didn't raise money. And the financial world changed in 2008. So everybody that was an established player, there's a company owned by backcountry.com now called Motorsport. They took money from Sequoia, right? This is like for an e-commerce motorcycle company. They raised in 99. Motorcycle Superstore wanted to be Walmart. Everybody wanted to be like the discount big retailer. And we're like, okay, So our thesis, our bet that we're going to place is that we're going to be the experiential guy that's high touch, high service, that really speaks to the passion here. That recipe was right, but what really accelerated was the tide went out on everybody else. Consumers got crushed. Capital became expensive when it was cheap for years from like kind of like 03, 04 through 08, and the financial crisis happened. So by the time all of the incumbents, right, that had distribution, we were bringing innovation to work through our thesis. They had distribution, they had audience already. They're all tightening their belts, cutting costs, and saying, "Oh my God, the tide's going out. We're over our skis. We got to figure this out." Well, over that 18 months, as they figured it out, if you look at the pyramid of customers, the top of the pyramid, the most valuable customers, the highest lifetime value, they were the guys and gals that rode that were like adults with good careers that bought expensive bikes and bought really expensive products. We came in and we just focused on them, scooped off the top of the pyramid. So all the people online that said, all there are these crappy discounters, and I want somebody that'll get on the phone with us or with me and talk for 30 minutes about the right helmet, the right fit, because I'm going to spend $1,000 on a helmet. That was the use case we were trying to solve. And by the time everybody figured out and got their feet set under them again with the financial crisis, our competitors, they went, "Where do all our best customers go?" And three dudes in an apartment in Philadelphia that like were brand new riders are going, "Yeah, it was us. It was us."
That's great. So were you ever presented with, we'll go to this in a second, but were you ever presented with VC money at the time?
Every 6 months. So I say this because we became more diligent about it. Every 6 months, my co-founders and I had a conversation of should we raise money? And what we arrived at, every time we talked about it, the first couple of years, you know, there's an old saying, if you ask for advice, you get money, you ask for money, you get advice. We were asking we got cash flow positive in like 90 days, which is really hard to do, but we were also willing to be broke for a long time. So the business outside of like our rent, our retail store, and our hosting could kind of sustain itself because we were working for free. So to get to that point, we're like, all right, do we need to raise money? What would we do if we had $2 million? And we kept asking that question, and we met with local entrepreneurs or people that were, you know, an exited business that if I wrote you a check for $500,000 right now, what would you do with it? We kind of looked at it and said, maybe we'd pay ourselves a little more. Maybe we'd move a little faster. And then we looked at each other and went, this thing's growing. So first year we did 1.8 million in sales, 3.6 second year, 7.2 third year. Fourth year we did 17 or 18 million in top line. At that point, like to grow any faster would have killed us. So it wasn't like pour money on marketing. And we had enough income that we could hire people to help scale it. So you know what I might say to all of you is, and I say this to entrepreneurs, if you're going to raise money, in a lot of cases, it's speed to market. Is this an opportunity that's not going to be there in 6 or 12 months and you can't do it organically? For us, we felt like we were moving fast enough to capture the market opportunity. So we kept turning down raising money. It wasn't until, I'm sure we're going to talk about it later, but it wasn't until we looked at the risk profile of the business for what we needed to do next, which is when we entertained taking on a partner to take some risk and money off the table to kind of double down on the model and expand. And that ended up allowing us to get bought. But it was like, it's risk or speed to market are a lot of times why I would say to raise and why we didn't.
So clearly you've given the growth trajectory of RevZilla over the last several years, you know, post you founding it. It's no longer 3 guys just running this business out of an apartment.
No.
Values, goal setting, being gong worthy. Speak a little bit to this and how that was kind of the core of the success of RevZilla.
Sure. So I was out. So to credit my co-founder, Matt, who was prescient on this, we were out. We got invited to visit YouTube. This is probably 2010 or 11. And we're out in San Bruno, and he and I are having dinner the night before. And it was so cool. It was right when YouTube, the campaign was YouTube means business. And they looked at what we were doing with early YouTube to try to explain products and facilitate sales. And they said, come out and visit with us with some other retailers. And Matt says to me over dinner, I remember really clearly, he goes, I feel like we need to define our core values. It's big enough, you and I aren't in, and Nick aren't in every meeting now. We need like to crystallize this waypoint. And what I would say to you is one of my regrets is that we collectively didn't do it sooner. Because when it comes to hiring, it's funny, you can hire folks for different roles at varying levels of experience. I used to say, you know, it's a lot of generalists early on, then you hire specialized skill sets, and you want to try to find somebody that can at least stay in that role for 18 months before you maybe have to hire over them in a growing company. But core values and defining the values of the business, which aren't squishy things, they're trade-offs, right? We're not going to hire brilliant jerks. No jerks allowed was number 6, which means that if we have the best developer we've ever seen, but they're a jerk, we will not hire them, right? You have to define these things. That as a waypoint was so materially impactful because core value hiring, if you're looking through the lens of core values, maybes have to be no's. Because when you bring in people that are not a value or a culture fit, it disturbs everybody else. People don't play as well in the sandbox. So being really intentional about this is what we stand for and this is how we operate. And this is the standard you're going to be held to. We fired people. We managed people out for being that could have functionally been great, but we're not a core value fit. Other companies won't do that, or sometimes don't. They say, oh, we need this seat. The seat's open. It's burning. I need somebody in finance. And they hire the brilliant jerk. And it means that everybody in the team's either really unhappy 6 months later, or they've had to let that person go because they're not a fit. And 6 months later, you wasted that time and you're back to hiring them again. The mishire is so expensive. Sorry,
so,
a little bit of a tangent.
No. I mean, it's valuable. And so is that the gong that was inside the floor? And when did that get rung?
So that's funny. That picture is me in Vegas. When we opened our first Vegas warehouse, and I'm really hungover in that picture because we went out the night before. We were opening that warehouse and put a gong in Vegas. But it looks like Be Gong Worthy's #1, which was the gong was if somebody wrote in customer feedback and he used the word love, whoever it was directed at got to ring the gong. Whether it was a team, I love your interface. Whether it was customer service, I love Jake. I can't believe what he did for me because I was having an issue with my order. It blew me away. Jake got to ring the gong. So Be Gong Worthy was you'd hear those gongs throughout the course of the day. When customers are going out of their way to tell you that they love you, like we wanted to celebrate those moments.
Well, you talked about that a little bit when we caught up before and how you were so focused on celebrating small wins for the people around you, not necessarily yourself so much. Speak to that a little bit and how you really felt like that energized and kind of got the team focused on the same initiative.
The losses are always the coaches and the wins have to be the teams. And I had a wonderful executive assistant that became chief of staff, and part of her job was to make sure we never missed a win to celebrate. And whether that was celebrating a team with a happy hour or bringing in lunch or calling somebody out in our Thursday all hands meeting, it's super important, especially from a leadership perspective, to praise, to support, and to call out the great work of the team. For me personally, I'm one of those fear of failure types where if you told me you did such a great job on X, I'd be like, thanks, I don't care. I don't need the pat. I'm already focused on the next 3 things I suck at. Like that's just how I'm wired, which in hindsight, I can appreciate what we did. I think it's what made me great at it. If I could say that I was good at that part of what the business needed at that moment in my career. But I'll tell you, it wasn't 9 years of cartwheels and rah and look at how great we were. It was like war paint. Like I expect that we need to be great at everything. And the things we know we're not good at, we need to relentlessly focus on. That's just how I'm wired.
So this is, you can't see it so well, but what's Blurple shirt mean to you? Is it Blurple? Was that the name?
It's totally Blurple. So the RevZilla shirt, which became my uniform, right? Everybody always talks about Steve Jobs always wore the black turtleneck. I became focused as I evolved on decision fatigue and how I could eliminate decisions. So every day, literally, if I was doing video, I didn't have a hat on, but I had that shirt on. If I wasn't doing video, I had a hat on and that shirt. It's this blue wannabe affliction. This guy in Delaware, Ken Adams, did that for us. We thought we were going to like sell it for $30. No one ever bought them. We just gave them away. But the first run of those shirts were this ink that they started blue, and over time with washing, they became purple. So it became the RevZilla too tight or extra medium Blurple shirt. And in like all my videos, I'm wearing that same shirt. And it's funny because we would give them to customers and we did sell them, but all the later batches were a blue that didn't fade to purple. But I have this like secret hoard of like 15 of those. People are like, does this guy ever change his clothes? I'm like, I changed which shirt it was, but no, I wear the same shirt every day. That is the famous Blurple shirt.
So how do you spoke a little bit to YouTube inviting you out.
Yeah.
How did YouTube energize the growth of RevZilla?
All right. So one of the first things that customers told us they loved about us was that we would spend time with them. So I always use the example of the BMW, which is this like adventure-touring motorcycle rider from Seattle. And so I'll call him Bob. Bob would call us on a Tuesday, and Matt, Nick, or I would pick up the phone because we had no employees in that first year. And Bob would say, hey, customer service person. Meanwhile, it's like, okay, we're a founder. I hope he doesn't figure it out. Like we have no employees. And he'd say, I live in Seattle. I ride 200 days a year. I have a big belly. I run really hot, so I need lots of ventilation. And I get rained on half the time. And I like the color yellow. What jackets should I buy? And we would, by process of using the site and our own knowledge, which grew over time, we would say, Bob, it's like we've actually narrowed down to these 3. And based on budget or how it fits you, this is one of the ones you'd buy. That could be an hour-long conversation with Bob. And at the end of it, Bob would go, oh my God, I ride with 15 other guys and gals, and I am going to tell them that I can't believe you exist in the universe. I will never shop from anyone else. It is so amazing what you just did for me, because I don't think anything, this is the best customer experience I've had anywhere on the internet. And we all looked at each other, myself, Matt, and Nick, and we said, that wins, and Bob just spent $2,500 with us, was just like paid our rent for the month. But it doesn't scale, right? How do you scale that? So the thesis was, can we shoot video on a lot of these complex products and put that video out there to make all the knowledge that we had to offer self-serve? So then a couple years later, our thesis was correct. Bob would call and he'd go, oh my gosh, I just watched 15 of your videos. I have it narrowed down to these 3. And the call of getting him to the right one to still spend the same amount of money was made 10x more efficient. And what we really didn't realize was that putting a face on it, like I did it because I was the one that was probably the most outgoing. We said, all right, if people hate what looks like the Jersey Shore guy selling motorcycle helmets, we'll take me down, we'll just try it. But what ended up happening was I'm very what you see is what you get. And customers actually developed what they call a parasocial relationship with me. So like it was like, well, I buy from Anthony and RevZilla. And then people were loyal to the human, not just loyal to the business. And that was like an added multiplier. But yeah, video started as a way to scale, right? Think about scaling the business. How can we scale the customer experience by making it more self-serve without giving anything, without cheapening it?
What was your opening line when you did these YouTube videos?
Hey, this is Anthony with RevZilla.
How did it change over time?
It got louder, it got faster. The early videos are all there. It was actually funny. I was on today because somebody sent me something, and you just go to the RevZilla page, uploads, sort by oldest, and you can see where we started. And it's like, I'm behind this table that's not high enough. Like it's actually weird because it's like below my fly. So it's like I have a product on a table and like my crotch is in the shot. And I'm like, hi, I'm Anthony with my coffee. And I'm going to describe to you this helmet. And what it became was this garbled, hey, this is Anthony with RevZilla. You can watch this side and ride. And literally I would talk without a break or a breath, without a cue card, for anywhere from like 5 to 20 minutes, like almost like in flow state, like blacked out. And I knew the product so well that I could do it. And that became like part of it. People were like, well, this is insane. This guy's nuts. He seems to know and share more than anyone out there is knowing and sharing. And I'm so happy it exists. And then it became its own thing.
So it's almost like you took the technology aspect of the e-commerce business and created a marketing personality around the company to supercharge it.
So the 3 strategic investments we made, right? If any of you ever heard of the book Blue Ocean Strategy, right? Where are you going to invest strategically? What are our differentiators? It started as technology, very quickly became customer service, and the 3rd pillar was media, right? And if you roll those things together and you say we have commerce and we have authority, or we have commerce and we have content, and as long as you're not willing to break the trust of the consumer, you end up in the place of the authority or the beacon or the resource. You say, I want RevZilla to be the indispensable resource for the motorcycle rider. Said differently, we exist as your riding buddy. If you don't have your buddy present, we exist in the world, and you're going to get more out of motorcycling because we do all of this for free and we charge the same as everybody else. So it was really a more for same strategy.
That's awesome. So we spoke a little bit earlier about, you play golf, play with a lot of good golfers.
So
Sometimes they make you, yes, I don't know if you played golf when you were in high school, given you weren't playing hoops and you were sitting in there coding, but
try not to get thrown out of Drexel for sharing MP3s. Keep going.
So, but you speak to obviously people that you've always put around you, like being this, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yep.
Speak to this Russian doll, more or less ethos that you had inside RevZilla, specifically around hiring.
Yeah, so and this one's specific, it's a little bit different. It's around hiring. So there's this, one of my favorite business quotes of all time is David Ogilvy and Mather, like legendary brand and advertising guy. And he would tell his folks, when we started the business, we had to learn how to go from people that did things to people that managed people. And then you have to figure out how to lead and become an executive, which is like a whole arc. But as we were learning to be managers and you're thinking about hiring, I'll never forget, I sat down with one of the founders of Five Below one time and I said, I am hiring somebody for 150 grand that does data science, and I have no idea the how of what they do. I can't do their job. And I'm so unsettled by that. And we had this great conversation at a restaurant called Serpico on South Street and talking about in so much of it, it's hire tall and get out of the way. And the quote from David Ogilvy is that I used to tell all my people when I tried to, I didn't do it consistently, but towards the end or last few years, I still have a box of hand-painted motorcycle Russian nesting dolls in my basement. My wife was like, where's this box going? But the quote is this: if we hire people who are shorter than ourselves, we build a team, we build a company of dwarfs. If we hire people who are taller than ourselves, we build a company of giants. And it's really, you have to be comfortable hiring people that are better than you at what their specialty or skill set is. And then the job is supporting them with, especially senior people, defining what success looks like, holding them accountable, and getting out of the way. I say to my people, it's like, if I'm telling you how, you're not the right person for the job. We should be agreeing on what success looks like, and then you tell me what you need. And my job is, if the pyramid's not top down, the pyramid's flipped. I'm at the bottom supporting the people that work for me to go do it. And that's, I always love that one. I love that you pull that, because I don't even told that story enough. And that's, people get scared about hiring even managers mid-level. I don't want to hire somebody that's better than me. No, your job is to scale yourself out of a job and stop doing so you can think. That way you can move and scale and move the chains forward. Like young managers sometimes don't have the confidence or knowledge they need to do that.
The key is strategy. Let everybody else execute.
Well, there's another line. My brother is a West Point grad. He's a lieutenant colonel in the military. We're both leadership geeks. We talk about it all the time. And he's got this great line. He's like, if to any of his leaders or managers, if you're doing, who's thinking?
Yeah.
Right? Job is above the shoulders work, not below the shoulders work from a management perspective.
So I wanted to show this real quick, and we'll have to move on given the time. But I think the culture, and we talked about this a little bit, that you created RevZilla was really kind of the key to the success. Obviously, you talked about the three parts, right? But this idea of 5% jokes and everybody enjoying it was really something that drew the people to RevZilla.
In 10 seconds, I can give you the value of that, right? Because you'd say, oh, it must have been fun for you guys as founders. It's actually about our customer strategy. So the core value was 10% orange. And it was like, I was like, but it's 5% jokes. But the best compliment we get from customers is, I feel like I'm part of your inside joke, because the voice was authentic. And I wrote it might be the blog post that's on my blog right now, the last one I wrote pre-COVID. But when people feel like they're behind the curtain and they're bought in, they're part of your cause. It's just really different if you can connect that way with your customers. Go ahead, keep going.
So this is actually pretty amazing. And so I would love to dig into this a little bit further, but the image on the left was actually taken in, or my left and everybody else's as well, 2015. And obviously it's a fortune cookie that says, you'll be successful someday.
Someday.
That's 2015.
Yeah.
The next image on the right, February of 2016, you've sold RevZilla.
Yeah, that's the deal toy. We were acquired / merged in February 23rd of 2016. After thinking about, we were really trying to do a market check to understand what our optionality was around how we could structure the business to maybe go international, build our own products, open stores, which are ways to expand the business. But they would have changed the capital complexity of the business and the risk. And we were all self-funded. So we did a market check and actually got bought.
How big was the company at that time?
Company was, the year we were bought, we did between 140 and 150 million top line.
How many people, do you recall?
Yep, probably about 260 FTEs.
Was there anything internally that you felt like you weren't as excited getting up every day doing the business as you were when you started?
Now, I have a post on my Instagram too. It's like the next morning after our deal closed, which for us was like, it was a deal that made a lot of sense on putting this business together, created a lot of value. But truthfully, we took money off the table. We took for the first time, we had meaningful cash out of the business. And honestly, like I was still at the office at 6 a.m. the next day. Like I was still had my war paint on. It was surprising for me when I decided to leave a year later, like that it arrived there, which sometimes happens with private equity deals or when you do inorganic things. But nothing, I mean, it was a blast. I mean, I looked at it as like, we just summited K2 and now relace your boots, everybody. And, we gave a lot of bonuses. We let everybody share in the upside. Everybody in the company actually got a check, some massive checks for people that were there early and had really big jobs. And even the person that was there 2 weeks, I think we gave them a $500 check. But I said, relace your boots, catch your breath. Now we're going for Everest, right? It was a de-risk and double down.
Were all partners interested in the sale, or was it mainly driven by one? Or
there were conversations. Should we wait another year? I had access along the way. I met some great VCs that gave us some amazing framing. If you feel like you're leaving some money on the table if you exit the business, it means you didn't wait too long. And another one who's a local VC, who's a legend, was like, there's an old saying. It's like, it's a great story till the data screwed it up. He actually used a different word. But it was like, and I wanted to make sure we never found ourselves in a position to need to raise money. It was these guys came in and we put together a compelling deal that created a lot of value creation. They had 120 stores. Half the business was own brand product, which means their own private label, but they needed digital, they needed leadership, and they had no online. And they needed somebody to run it. And it was like, oh my God, like this thing just became mega Voltron, which is a reference that you're all too young to get. So through that lens, people ask me, they're like, you left after a year and it seemed like it was like tough to leave. And it was bittersweet for me. Would you do it again? 100%. Like we put our chips, placed our big bets, and we made strong moves with the best of the information we had at the time. And even 6 years later, even with some of the things that haven't gone the way that I wanted them to go, I had no regrets on it.
Why did you step down?
So I left because there were just a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So there was a point 10 months later where you could call it maybe a little culturally, there were some folks involved that are no longer involved in the PE side. You just started seeing eye to eye. Like my job as a PE owned CEO at that point is most efficient path to value creation, because we know that in 3 to 5 years, we're going to sell the company again. Like that's what we signed up for, right? And I just think it was like too much of a wrestling match. And there were some cultural things with me and them that just like weren't lining up. And I was starting to get a little exhausted. And I remember one day I was talking to my really close friend, David Bookspan, who's another Philly entrepreneur. It's like one of my best friends, and we're always like family. And I said, it just doesn't feel like the inputs match the outputs right now. And I'm not, and most of my day are things that are taking energy from me versus giving me energy. And I'm bummed I've arrived in this place. And I said, my biggest thing kind of keeping me in the seat was loyalty to my team and wanting to like hang on to support everybody. And he kind of said to me, he goes, you've done enough. Because you took care of everybody. Everybody's in a great seat. Everybody has great experience. People that want to leave will leave. He goes, there's a life cycle to all these things. And he goes, I know it's not where you thought you'd be 10 months later, but if in your heart of hearts, you really feel like you might be able to solve problems at five problems at once by actually stepping out of the CEO seat, he goes, nobody's going to fault you for it. And it was almost funny. It was like from someone that I respect, I needed external permission to do it, but it was hard. First year out, every day in the shower in the morning, I'm like, I identified as RevZilla guy, startup CEO, right? Like, and I know what my go-to-market would have been. And over time it gets easier, but it's like, yeah, I left some of it on the field, but it's okay. It was still a great story. Great. We had a great run.
So here's some things post or around the time of the transaction. What's you're speaking at the Disruptor 50 conference. I love your name tag post sale. What do you do? Helper. What do you wake up that excites you today? It's the same energy when you're at RevZilla.
It's always fun when I get to work with entrepreneurs, and like even today, sharing things that I'm good at or I know or I feel like I got good at, it always gives you juice. It's great to be able to help. There's the helper high, right? So I will tell all of you, there's an old Ben Franklin quote. If you want to make a friend, ask a favor, put your hand up, say you don't know, ask somebody for help. Because a lot of times they find just as much joy in helping you get there as you got value from getting there. I sit on 3 nonprofit boards. I'm still on RevZilla/Komodo, which is the parent company's business is a juggernaut at this point. We have like 170 stores, 3 big websites. We have a social media app or a ride tracking app, all this stuff. So I'll tell you, it's the way I describe it is RevZilla for me was like eating one Biggs, the same meal every day. Now it's a bit more like Tapa style dining. You get bites of things. And sometimes you wish you had another helping, but you don't because you're not the operator. But it also doesn't come with the stress. And I'll tell you this too, like I was the best, most productive version of myself in my career as I was running RevZilla. But in fairness to my wife and children, I will say I probably wasn't the happiest and I wasn't the friendliest. I was like laser beamed, super intense. And even in reflecting on my team, what I would do different if I had a do-over on some of it, there are moments I could have been more empathetic, right? Because it's not a family. It's I think this is a Reed Hastings or it's LinkedIn guy. We're a sports team. It's a meritocracy. And you're the coach. It's about putting the right players in the right seats or the right spots to be successful in the right point in the game. And sometimes it's moving so fast that you have to make really hard decisions that really do hurt people's family. And sometimes you lose friends over it. Those are the crappy moments. But yeah, these days I get to be useful and relevant and helpful. the mixture of things with less stress than I had.
What's your feel about Philly as a startup scene? Obviously, a lot's changed in the city due to COVID. Still as vibrant as it was pre-COVID? What are the struggles? What are the common mistakes entrepreneurs are making then?
Well, I feel like it's moving slowly, right? So I remember this guy, Colin Evans, who was one of the early StubHub guys that we met with 15 years ago, right? And he's running Amazon's VC fund for Amazon right now on the West Coast. Super helpful guy. And I remember him being like, I'm spending lots of time in Philly. Like he had a StubHub exit. He's like, I want to juice up the Philly ecosystem. He was a Penn grad. And he's like, I want to get it to move faster. And there have been a bunch of us like over time, some more concerted with others. Like Brock Weatherup was the head of the Philly startup leaders for a while, like another multi-time entrepreneur. I would say that sometimes it feels like it hasn't moved as fast as we've all wanted it to, because there are folks that are exited that do have the ability or capacity to be an angel that are local. There are some legendary VCs locally that invest in Philly and beyond. Yeah, I wish it was bigger. I mean, rooting for the GoPuff guys to have a big exit, rooting for the guys at Kinetic, Michael Rubin's juggernaut, right? What they've done. And the fact that people are still local, that money then naturally flows physically, can flow back into the ecosystem. The advice I give all of you is don't settle for the Zoom. Or after the pandemic, I'm sick of Zooms. Like I enjoy meeting an entrepreneur over coffee when it happens, even if it means that I didn't want to come to the city and they had to figure out how to get to the burbs. But like, if you want to really engage with somebody or make an impression, lots of VCs, it's like, oh, it's great. Nobody travels. We all do Zoom now. I'll tell you what, if you want to endear yourself to somebody or share the energy, if you're going to start something or even think about getting advice or raising money, fall all over yourself to try to figure out, even if it's for 30 minutes, to get in front of somebody. I'd say that's the biggest thing that's different, where everybody's like, oh, it's just so much easier. I don't want to be on any of the Zooms I'm on, ever. Like it, right? Just think about that.
You're a well-versed reader. It's actually a quote. I don't know if I pulled this from one. There's more treasure in books than all the pirates loot in Treasure Island. So you read a lot.
Yeah.
If you were to kind of look back in yourself, you're in Drexel, anything you would tell the students here today to do differently that you would have done differently if you were in their shoes?
Keep trying things, take risks, don't be afraid to pivot, do things before life gets in the way. Like I said, not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers, right? Be introspective. One of my things that I say all the time, I was just with another group of people earlier in their careers on Sunday, and I said, the better you know yourself, the better you can scale yourself, and the better you can put yourself in positions where you can be successful. I mean, that's anything from people like, oh, the personality profile, Myers-Briggs, DISC profile, the Enneagram. What got you here won't get you there. If you want to be a nerd about, go-to-market strategies and functional skill sets change, but the people patterns don't change. It's all people the higher you go, and the ability to communicate, build relationships, and know your blind spots and self-manage is so stinking important. I started out RevZilla as a person that could tell a story and recruit a team, and I had a technical background. I became a good leader when I knew enough about what I was good at and what I sucked at, and then I could self-manage to make sure that the output of my team wasn't encumbered by my own weakness, blind spot, lack of emotional regulation. There's so many things that leaders need to do, and they're out there. There's a million different books about the same topics, just with somebody else's different words. If you want to be really effective, know yourself and be introspective. And oh my Lord, it's a force multiplier.
What are you reading today?
I'm going to read next? I'm going to read Scott Galloway's book. It's what's it called? America Adrift. America in 100 Charts. I'm a big pivot podcast, Scott Galloway. I think he's this great mixture of insight and smarts and empathy. I'm a fan of his. That's probably what's next on my reading list.
Well, Anthony, appreciate you coming out. Would love to open it up for Q&A. We've got some time.
You made it to the end. That's amazing. I was like, there's no way you're getting to the end.
Hi, man.
It's fun.
Want to open it up? Anybody has any questions directly for Anthony? You like that?
All right, what do you guys got? Nothing's out of bounds. We'll start here and then we'll go this way.
How did you meet your wife?
Mutual friends in Philadelphia.
Connection.
Mutual connection. Going to the shore a little bit in the summer. That's how we met. She had a good guy friend who was a friend of mine. And then we got together and a bunch of people were like, how did that not happen sooner? And I put my hand up of like, because I was like an idiot 18 months ago. Like, I'm glad it didn't happen sooner. We met at the right times.
So in the beginning, you had, your customers and you were creating these connections through phone calls and you were growing those connections through YouTube videos and you were able to exponentially grow, get that family of customers.
Yep.
Is there new ways in which you have now seen, 20 years later where you can establish those connections similarly to YouTube videos, but in different ways?
Sure. I mean, you could think about content broadly. I mean, I might start with the customer and work backwards and say, in any space, what does the customer need, right? What's the pain point? I like to think that we did a lot of things that made people feel good, but I think the biggest value of the business is that we were a painkiller, meaning we found customer friction, which was in between them and enjoying motorcycling, and we removed that. So what I might do is start with customer, find the friction points, and build tools, offer services, build content, and work backwards, whether it's editorial, media, community. There are a lot of pieces that can be invested in that create scale and a moat for a business that really start with what the customer needs. I didn't mention it today. The mission of RevZilla was to advance the experience of the motorcycle enthusiast. The mission was not build an e-commerce company and make a lot of money. That would be a mission about us. The mission was external. It's like, what is the framework of things that we can do that move our customer closer to their goals?
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna fanboy a little bit, but I won't apologize for it. So I've followed RevZilla since 2010, 2011.
Oh, wow.
So really long time ago when I was young and young and also looking at a bike. But I remember you were really engaging with customers, with videos on YouTube. You were doing weekly lives. At what point were you afraid of being pulled away from the business side and more the media and engagement side, or how did you balance that?
No, so when we started doing video, so in retail, the top person is usually a merchant, right? And a merchant doesn't mean I buy stuff. A merchant means I know the customer and we buy or make products that serve the customer. In online retailing, it's a mixture of like marketing meets merchandising, right? Like wrapped in customer or a consumer experience through tech. So I think I'm a product guy, just like my co-founders were product guys. And when video kind of happened, my point in telling you that is because we were merchants first and like really understanding the products, it made the video piece actually, people were like, is it a teleprompter? Do you have something in your ear? Are you reading from cards? Do you have to memorize all that? I just knew the product really well. So I would study a product a week ahead of time. And then we used to shoot anywhere from 10 to 20 videos. I used to do it when we started doing it in like 09 through maybe 11 or 12 for like a half day on one day a week, sometimes twice a week. As the business scaled and I really needed to be more the CEO role and focus on the things that push the whole business forward, we figured out how do you scale me as a media personality. We did it a couple ways. We hired a Harley guy. We hired an off-road guy. I was still the gear guru, like the guy at helmet, technical products, right? Even hard parts, it wasn't me. So anything that we can scale away from me, do it. But then it became, I used to shoot video from 8 to 10:30 one morning a week. And I would shoot 8 to 15 products in one take. And I would do the prep work for that with my team of product research, like over the week previously. So, I mean, and you'd be shocked at how efficient we were at it. So it never got to a point where I'm like, I got to get out of video because it's gobbling up my time. Like every day, people ask, like, what's the difference of owning your own business? Every day is the same day. Like I work 7 days a week and I was in at 6 a.m. and many days I left at 7. Video was 4 hours of my week. So it would never got in the way of anything else. But we figured out we scaled over time, we scaled it away from it as well, where I continue to be a figurehead, but then we brought other segments to life with other personalities. Good question. Got
So I officially registered my LLC a couple months ago, but my biggest problem I'm having right now is funding. And I know you mentioned about raising funds, but what kind of advice would you have as far as the pros and cons of looking for like an angel or other investors, or just kind of any insight you have about that?
So be really specific about what you want to raise money and how you're going to use it, right? The advice I usually give everybody, and my VC friends like elbow me, is like skip every round you can, including all of them. Because as soon as you raise outside capital, it changes. Now, if you raise friends and family money, the burden of that is like you've raised money from your friends and family, and it's going to feel really crappy and could affect relationships if the experiment doesn't work. Because that's what startups are. Startups are an experiment, right? I might say to you, it's like, how much can you do or pilot even moonlighting? If you're out of school, I was talking to an entrepreneur yesterday and I said, how far can you take it continuing to keep your job while getting some early customer sentiment? You know, if you said, I'm going to build the next Airbnb, you probably have to leave everything, put your blinders on and raise a ton of money to even make a dent, right? But if you're doing something where you know there's a defined need, can you crawl, walk, run? A VC would tell you too that, you know, some businesses are an airplane and some are jets. And raising from VC is jet fuel. And you only really need to raise jet fuel, I'm quoting Josh Kaufman now, if you're going to build a jet. Because some businesses can't fly that fast and that high. The market just won't support it. If that makes sense.
So I wanted to ask, it sounds like it was easier for you to figure out what you didn't like and what you liked. But even within the things that, let's say after dividing from the things you didn't like, so how do you find the things that you actually like? Because it's very hard to escape the neutrality. And there are things that just are mixed. How do you escape that?
So I'll tell you, if the question is, you know, I might take an inventory. If I was doing it now, take an inventory of what you get excited to do, what gives you energy, even in a normal social setting. I think you could tell that like I'm an extrovert and talking to you guys is a lot of fun for me. I have been like that my whole life. So I think that if I was an adult in my life when I was 20 and knew me, and I said, what do you think I'm going to like more, being in sales or project management? Then an adult or somebody at any point in their career would have been like, oh, how are you not going to be in sales? I'm a storyteller, right? And I can recruit. So I think it's those cues that I can articulate now very concisely that we're all there. Some of it was reflecting. The other thing you can do is, and again, I mentioned it earlier, there's something for $15 you can do called the disc profile, where literally some people are like, oh, those personality profiles, they're BS. Like, honestly, I did my disc profile and it was like someone was following me around taking notes for 2 weeks. And it clearly was like, okay, you over-index on social, people skills, moving fast, collaborating. You under-index on needing safety, moving slowly, being stuck in the weeds. Ready? So me personally, and you get 2 flavors. You get at risk or at work, and you get at rest. At rest, move fast, collaborate, and I want to know enough of the details so I can make a choice. I don't need weeds. As a CEO, to be effective, I realized that I actually had to focus more and put myself into the weeds to understand more, to make better choices, because my natural tendency is to want to move too fast. But again, like a little bit of introspection, a little bit of reflection, a little bit of asking people feedback around you, where do you see me shine? And maybe a little bit of personality profiling. And you might get a sense of, I should not be a coder. I should not be an accountant. I might do great in sales or something that's more people oriented versus being happier with your headphones on. Like, it's kind of like, do you want to work with people and storytell? Do you want to be the mechanic? You know, right? There are different roles there. And I think if you lean into it, you might discover some things really quickly. Got it in the back and we'll come up front.
I hope it's okay to ask. I think I was starting to towards you, which is providing advice for how it all comes together. So I thought you invested in a coffee company, and Lebow. Are they all like from Drexel, or is it like they're all parts of interest? I just want to know when I go out at some point and ask, like, find an investor. I just want to know how to like what. Yeah.
So they were all warm. The one thing they have in common is they were all warm intros. This is not my line. A VC wrote this and it made a lot of sense. It might be another Reid Hoffman. And it was like, if you're going to go raise money and you want to approach somebody that might be someone that invests in companies, like one of the things that shows grit from the entrepreneur is finding a way to get a warm intro versus coming in cold. It just sends a signal of, it's a qualifier. My stuff. So GoPuff came from one of my friends that was a startup guy in the city. He said, I don't want to join their board. I'm going to invest. They could use somebody that's closer in their age, that's, they're figuring themselves out as leaders, right? So for a couple of years, I worked kind of I was a board member, but I was also an advisor. It was less about being an investor. Amino was one of my best friends. I mentioned him. Dave Bookspan was doing a company, and then he had an Insta syndicate, right? Because it was all of our, right? The other thing I'll say to you is, even now, I invest in trend lines versus data points. So I don't think I've done it once where I've met somebody, heard the pitch once and said, in. It's usually aware of them, read a little bit about them. Somebody put them on my radar. I had coffee with them once. 6 months later, hey, they've made progress. Now I have a trend line of they did this. they showed good character, they followed up, they followed through, right? And then it becomes a trend line, which is a safer bet. You're welcome. Oh wait, this gentleman, and we'll come back to you.
Hi. So you touched on about recruiting the right guy that fit personality that fit with the organization, not a jerk with a good skill set, right? So can you touch more on that? Because I was thinking about what like an interviewee like can grab you, like you feel like this guy fits with the organization. How can you define that, or what do you look for in an employee in general?
Sure. So the first thing, functional skill set. Like I said, early on, a bunch of people that can figure anything out in the early stages, and somebody can sell, right? In RevZilla, I was a guy that could sell, and our first 10 employees were people that were generalists that could figure stuff out with us. After that, it becomes more specialized, and you hire functional skill sets, finance, marketing, blah, blah, blah. And I would say that I tried never to hire anybody that we were going to outgrow within 18 months. I wanted to make sure somebody had at least a playbook that they could come in, they could be effective for 18 months. On the value side, right? It's less about personality. It's more about value system. What do they think is important? How do they work? You know, do they come to work because they need a job, or they come to work because they want to work on a passionate team and they want to deliver their best? You know, are they a jerk because they think I can get paid because I'm good enough and I can just be a jerk to everybody? Or are they somebody that says, no, it's like, I choose to put the energy into being a good citizen and a good teammate, along with being great at my craft. Core values list for a company, whether it's 3 things or 9, like ours were, it's trade-offs, right? It's like we were trading the brilliant jerks for maybe a harder time hiring, but people that would be caring with their other employees. And honestly, I think that starts with the founding team. There might be ready. So there are companies out there that say our business gurus were Travis Kalanick at Uber. I think the guys that did Uber the first time around were jerks. I wouldn't want to work there, but that's my choice because my value system doesn't line up. They might have said, we're mercenaries. We don't care who you are. We don't care if you'd sell your mother up the river to raise the next round of funding or close the next customer. That's what we do. It's a zero-sum game, right? I think that what happens is you hire people with like values, and that becomes the culture.
Okay. One more question.
One more question.
We gotta let Anthony.
Hold on a second. Is there anyone that hasn't asked a question yet that's got one?
Real quick.
Yeah, I'm just curious how you went about going from maybe 0 to your first 100 customers. Talking about how you grew word of mouth after building relationships, but how did you go like initially from 0? How did you reach out to people?
It's a great question, and there's a great framework here. If you have a consumer business or really any business, can you do $1 million in business without marketing? Which really gives you a sense of product market fit, right? There are a lot of companies, mistakes early startups make where they say, we raised some money, we think we have a good product, let's just go market it. And what happens is they're earning customers that use it once or download it or check out, and they churn immediately. They never come back. And that company says, we think we have a great business. And what they really have is a leaky bucket they're just dumping money into. So what I'd say to you is when we started, we knew we were going to have a mixture of products. We knew we were going to answer the phone and listen and be helpful. And the early, I wouldn't even say marketing. We did pay-per-click advertising, right? Like starting in year 2. But in year 1, we were in the forums answering people's questions. We went to where the customers were. Back then, it was not Google product search. You know how you search for a product and the product listings come up? Back then, it was called Google Base or Frugal, which was you'd offer a free data feed of products. And then Google, based on your SEO rank, would show your listings before they monetized it. We did that. We were in the forums and we tried to help customers. And it was a little bit of word of mouth, a little bit of Google base, a little bit of organic rank around certain products. I mean, and we were selling a random mix of stuff. First thing we sold was a silver $9 can of paint that cost us $7 to buy and $7 to ship. And we lost $5 in our first order. And it took us a week to get it. Right. But then by the end of that first year, it had compounded. We'd earned some repeat business, earned some new customers through word of mouth. The biggest thing is there were enough people coming in to show us the product was working without us dumping money on it just for early traction that might not have been the right traction. You got to wrap it up.
Yep. Anthony, thanks so much for coming in.